number one rule on donating after a disaster is one of the hardest rules for people to understand. It's very difficult to get the concept, although it's a very simple concept. So what I'm going to do to help you guys understand rule number one is a little bit of audience participation is going to happen. So in my book, unfortunately, the Wasatch Fault opens up. I love to talk about the Wasatch Fault. It's in the newspaper all the time. It's opened up. 60% of the buildings in Salt Lake have been destroyed. We've lost 46,000 people, and we're now recovering from the disaster. So what we've got going is we have a couple of things. We have our aid recipient. Todd has been very, very kind to be the Salt Lake City resident. He's the person in need of aid. If I give you one of these and you have writing on the back of it, that means I'm actually going to call on you to answer a question. If I give you one of these that does not have writing on the back of it, you just simply have to pass things along when I ask you to. Jean has been our extremely kind donor. Jean lives in Thailand, and after the tsunami, all sorts of people sent aid to Thailand, but she was really appreciative of it. And so she decided she wanted to help with the Utah recovery. And so Jean has gotten her friends together, and she's come up with a food donation. They've collected food, they put it in a box, and they are going to send it to Todd to help him recover from the disaster. So there's your food donation. Now, Jean, I'm going to put you on the spot a lot. I apologize for that. Jean, one of the first questions you would have when you made those donations is, how do you plan to send the food? Are you going to send it by air, which is very expensive? Or are you going to send it by sea, that's a lot cheaper, but takes 3 months? Which is the better way to send the food?
So I'm asking
you, how are you going to do that?
I think it should get there right away. I mean, they're in need right now.
Okay.
But I might find out if plenty of food is coming now, and if so, then, I mean, if they have enough to start out with from other sources that are closer, then I might send it by sea.
Okay, great. So then, one of the things you always got to think about, of course, is it going to go bad during transit? Because believe it or not, a lot of the stuff that USAID sends, such as flour, actually rots on the ships as it's going over there. So what you end up with is a whole bunch of rotten food. And so that was one of the things that you need to think about as well. And I changed the order of these numbers, but will the food go bad? Or will whatever you're sending go bad in transit? So hopefully with the week by air, it's not going to go bad. Who are you going to get to pay for it? If you're going to send it by air, that's really expensive. I can't even tell you how expensive it is by air. How will you pay to get those donations over? I'm putting you really in the spot here.
Well, since I'm paying for a bunch of food, then I might just consider that as part of the cost, and so I would say, okay, I'm going to donate this amount, and so part of it would be allotted for the shipment by air.
Okay, so you and the people who are kind of donating will pay for the shipment by air. Okay, that's a good thing. A lot of people think that aid agencies or the UN will ship for them. They don't. They do not ship for you. So whenever you start to collect donations, the very first thing you've got to think about is how are you going to pay for it to get over there? Because it's going to be your responsibility to get it over there. So the next question is, and actually I switched your guys' role. Todd was supposed to get all these questions, but instead Jean did because I put the cards out wrong. Jean, do you have permission to get food into that country? Will the port authorities allow it to enter the country?
Good question. I hadn't thought of that.
And this happens a lot. If you think about it, after the Burma earthquake, the Myanmar government did not want outside aid. They turned back ships of U.S. goods. They did not allow them to dock. Also, in the Gaza conflict, they turned back shipments as well. I had an experience in Thailand where a church group had a playground donated to them. They couldn't get it out of customs. They actually had to ship the playground back and pay for transit both directions. So you got to think about it. Do you have permission to actually get that food or that donation into the country? Already out of time. Okay, once you get into the country, of course, you've now got to pay the custom fees, which is another expense you kind of need to add on top of that. When I was in Thailand, somebody donated school supplies to one of my friends. The customs people didn't want to let it out of customs until they put a little gift on every single desk that it had to pass through. Plus, you had to have an aid agency there willing to accept it. By the time they got that all in line, they'd overdone their week stay and they started to get charged fees, a daily fee for storage. By the time they got out of customs, it actually cost more to get it through customs than had they bought it in the country itself. And so custom fees is something you need to think about when you're making overseas donations. Next question. You got it into LA. How are you going to get it to Salt Lake City? Very rarely do disasters happen right at where the port is located. So then there's always the overland transit fee as well. So you've got your donation. Let's go ahead and start moving it down the line. We figured out that we are going to ship it by air. Now we figured out that you're going to pay for it with the donations. Somehow you figured out how to get it through the customs department. Somebody had to have gone there and picked it up from customs, got it to the overland. Okay, we got it to overland now. We've got it near Salt Lake City. Next question. How are you going to get it to Todd? How do you know that Todd even needs it? How are you going to pick Todd out from all of the other thousands of people in the Salt Lake Valley once you actually get the food to them? So the next thing you've got to figure out is, how are you going to distribute it? In Thailand, there were problems with people giving food to the temporary camps closest to the roads because they were the most obvious. A couple things happened with that. One thing, people in the temporary camps further away got less donations. The other issue is because the donations came in whenever, people actually quit their jobs so they could be at the temporary camp when the donated goods came in. So we're going to go ahead and pretend like Nick knows how to distribute it. There you go, Nick. So you're going to take it. Now, here's a question. Would it have been cheaper to just simply have sent the money over and purchased the food in Utah? At this point in time, we really need to look at the economics of overseas shipping, customs, overland shipping, and a distributor. And so that's one thing you really need to think about as well. Would it have been better to donate money instead of goods? So finally, Nick distributes it to Todd.
Thank you.
Todd, as the recipient of that aid, how do you feel?
Great.
Why do you feel great?
Well, I have a family of 6. I'm out of my house, out of my car, unemployed, and yeah, so many unknowns. So this is just something that I wouldn't have to worry about so much. It's one thing I could not worry about for a temporary, a short period of time, so I can focus on other things, getting a job, providing a place for my family.
Great, good. Tom, would you go ahead and open it up and show us what aid you received?
Nice. I received fish sauce, dried squid, and rice noodles.
Todd, are your 4 children going to eat those?
I doubt it.
So here's another problem. Even if you finally get that item to the person, it could be culturally inappropriate. It could be religiously inappropriate. We had a bunch of Muslims get sent canned pork, which of course they immediately couldn't eat. It could be inappropriate for the season or for the weather. We had a lot of donations of winter hats, coats, and gloves to southern Thailand, which has 2 seasons, hot and wet. So if it's not appropriate donations, unfortunately, it immediately becomes waste instead of the well-intended donation that it was. So now the next question is Smith's Food and Drug, Merrill. What do you feel about this whole thing?
I wish they would have bought it from me.
Why?
Use the business.
Why? What's happening? Why do you need the business?
Well, at this time, we've had this great catastrophe. Employees have been hurt. Many have died during what has happened, the earthquake and everything. People have kind of cut back on their spending. They're worried about where they're getting food, where they're worried about where their money can go to, and a lot of them aren't coming in, and I'm facing the real possibility of bankruptcy.
All right. So here's the #1 rule. Don't send anything. Don't send any goods after a disaster for a couple of reasons. It costs more to send goods than to buy it locally. If it's inappropriate donation, it immediately becomes garbage. If it's the right kind of donation, it undermines the farmers and the local businessmen struggling to get their life back together after a disaster. Madam Toastmaster?